You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? Welcome to the Locked On Wolves POSTCAST. Wolves win. They are a season-high 4 games over 500, but at a cost. They lose Nickeil Alexander-Walker in a lethargic performance against the depleted Atlanta Hawks. Glad you joined us tonight, reacting to this 192 Timberwolves win. I'm Sam Ekstrom, pinch hitting for the postcaster general himself. Luke Inman gets a well-deserved night off. Jack Borman joins from Target Center, where he witnessed something tonight. It was a basketball game. There was absurdity. There was injury. There was lethargy. There was not energy. We'll get to all of it. Just enough from Naz and Rudy tonight. We had objects falling from the sky.
We had the air conditioning blasting at Target Center in the middle of January. We had everything.
A little taste of it felt like an old school Timberwolves game, like 2007 Timberwolves game. Brought to you by FanDuel tonight. You can bet the Super Bowl 59. There's no better way. And if you're a new customer, bet $5, win that bet, score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Wolves didn't cover the spread, by the way. They were taking on a Hawks team that was missing Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, Larry Nance Jr., Bogdan Bogdanovic. I mean, everybody. It was the Timberwolves against DeAndre Hunter tonight, Jack. And it didn't have to be this way. It was a 17-point lead at halftime. Didn't even feel like the Wolves played that good of a first half. They're up by 17. It would have taken just a mild effort in the third quarter to get your bench cleared in the fourth quarter. Maybe Nickeil's not even on the floor in the fourth quarter to get hurt, but the second half was an absolute abomination. Wolves hang on 192. You texted me mid-game. You said there's no juice in that arena. No. I'm guessing that was the case the whole night.
Yeah, that was certainly the case the whole night. Outside of Rob Dillingham with some flashes early second quarter where he was really hustling, and then when Naz Reid was laying every limb out there on the court at the end of the game, there just wasn't a whole lot of spark in the arena. And Chris Finch started his post-game press conference, from reading the stuff on Twitter, just down the hall here, fuming, saying that his guys were BSing around. It starts with his top players, and that's certainly the case of what happened in that third quarter, especially. I mean, you had Anthony Edwards come out and take, all of the shots to start the third quarter. Had nine shot attempts. Every single player, except for Rob Dillingham, that played in the third quarter, turned it over, led by 3 with Julius Randle, and then everyone else had 1 apiece. So they had 9 turnovers, 5 made field goals. They were 5 of 17. In that third quarter, and then they were 7 of 11 from the free throw line too. Ant missed 2 of 3 after getting fouled on the 3-point shot, and Rob Dillingham missed a pair too. I think just they couldn't get anything right. The ball handling was atrocious. The passing was atrocious. They weren't crashing the glass with the same intensity that they did in the first half for profit. And they just couldn't get anything going. And the Wolves bench couldn't provide any spark either. That was something that we've become so accustomed to. And happened in the first half as well, but has really been happening a lot lately with this bench coming in and providing some spark, and Na and Rob and Naz all playing pretty good for the most part, outside of Nickeil having a few rough shooting games here and there. But I mean, then in the third quarter, I think it was 16-0 Atlanta in terms of bench points, and then in the second half as a whole, it was 31-4 at Atlanta. DeAndre Hunter had 22 of those alone. I know the Hawks are trying very hard to preserve his 6th man of the year candidacy, so they did not start him tonight in this game, even though he absolutely should have. So not really maybe your true bench player juicing the bench points there, but I mean, point goes to serve that I just don't think the Wolves got enough from their bench, especially considering how low energy their starters were, and I think that's kind of what happens when you lean on this crutch all year of your bench kind of bailing you out and playing really well. And when you come out with the energy that the Timberwolves did in the third quarter, and you don't have that kind of that backstop behind you, you just see what can happen and what happens when the wheels fall off of the offense as you did in that third quarter. And it's just unfortunate that, turnovers. The Wolves had done such a good job taking care of the basketball these last 5-6 games as they started to turn a corner offensively, and then to just put forth a showing like that was really unfortunate to see.
It probably due for the emotional letdown after your best performance against a rival on Saturday, but gosh, this basketball team is more susceptible to emotional letdowns than I've ever seen. They play down to their opponents regularly. Let's remember previous attempts to get 4 games over 500, which is the best thing that comes out of tonight, is the Wolves have finally crossed that threshold. But think about previous attempts at this. Losing to Miami with nobody out there for the Heat, and they lose that awful game, 95-94 on that like weird inbounds play, kind of where they backdoored them at the right before the buzzer. Then there was the Golden State loss just a couple Fridays ago where Curry went off late. They didn't have Draymond, didn't have Pajemski, didn't have a couple guys. I mean, there's no reason why the Wolves should be in a dogfight late with Atlanta. But like you said, the bench, Josh Minott gets a run in the first half, misses a couple bunnies. Naz Reid, really good in the first half, 5 for 5, kind of goes to sleep in the second half and gets banged up, like you mentioned. I mean, like a foot, a shoulder, a wrist. He was diving on the floor, working hard, not making shots, though. Nickeil, 2 for 7 tonight. Dillingham hit 2 jumpers and missed a couple free throws and was fairly unimpactful. So not a lot of depth scoring. Starters, give them enough of a lift to get the job done. But let's talk quickly about Nickeil here. Speaking of that bench, Jack, the report on the injured Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a lower left leg contusion. That's vague, unclear exactly on limited replays that we've seen what happened to him. In a lot of pain, not putting a lot of pressure on that leg. If he's out for any amount of time and Dante's out for a couple more weeks, your bench suddenly, you're going to be relying on the Dillinghams and the Minotts of the world.
Yeah, no question about it. And this may have been an opportunity for, maybe Terrence Shannon Jr. to get in the mix here. As Luke and I have discussed earlier this year, that it would probably take an injury or two for him to crack the mix, and he just hasn't. But he unfortunately is out with a foot sprain. So, you're not going to be able to press that button, and you're going to be relying on Josh Minott and Joe Ingles to be able to backfill some of those minutes. And, the Timberwolves fans haven't seen a lot of Joe Ingles this year, but he was very competent for the Utah Jazz last year as a secondary playmaker, pretty similar to what Kyle Anderson did for the Wolves last year. And then just his spot up corner 3-point shooter. He shot over 40% on catch and shoot threes last year, and Orlando averaged like 10 points a game. So I think if he can at least provide you some shooting efficiency and be another guy that can, you can pair with Rudy Gobert and has that connection, but also be, a stimulant for good ball movement, I think that'll be really important for the Timberwolves as well. I think, again, like it's going to look a little bit different in terms of some of the lineup combinations that we see out there on the floor, but I think it's just incumbent on every single player that's going to be out there that, you just got to really just go back to the fundamentals. I mean, when you haven't played with some of these guys, you're going to be in some wonky lineup combinations. I just think, if you just don't hold the ball forever, you don't dribble the air out of the basketball, you just keep the ball moving, keep moving yourself, set a screen, cut, just do all these things that can just kind of keep the flow and the energy and the rhythm of the offense alive and still try, and then try to get out and run and transition when you're able to. I think that'll help relieve, a lot of the pressure that, that you may feel from the rotation being a little wonkier. But yeah, I think, Anthony Edwards is really going to have to defend if Nickeil Alexander-Walker misses some time, because Nickeil's been that guy that's picked up the quicker and speedier ball handlers that we've seen for opposing teams. And he's been, a really good guy that you can pair alongside Jaden McDaniels when teams have significant perimeter talent, like we're going to see in Phoenix with Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Nickeil surely would have been tasked to guard either Booker or Beal in those minutes, likely Beal as he's been coming off the bench. But I think that it's just going to be kind of a committee effort to replace what Nickeil's done in terms of some of the playmaking stuff, maybe with Ingles, some of the 3-point shooting stuff, maybe with Ingles, and then Anthony Edwards and Josh Minott certainly are going to be asked to step up and carry some of the more defensive load.
Too bad that this is happening if they miss Nickeil, because they were starting to play faster with Dante and Nickeil. And without those two in the mix, you can't play as fast as you want. This is a positive report, though, from Chris Hine, who's in the locker room. Chris Hine of the Star Tribune. Na was joking with teammates in the locker room, moving around on his own, albeit gingerly, and told Leonard Miller he was okay. So that's something. That's something to hang on to. Eye test didn't look good. The verbiage of the injury seemed weird. I think the way he was walking, to me, and I'm not a doctor, it looked like there was nothing in his left leg, like it was an Achilles kind of thing. And that's what someone in the comments said. And that crossed my mind as well. If he's saying he's okay, that probably means they've done the Achilles test. I mean, they would know right away if it was an Achilles injury. So that would probably rule that out. And we'll keep watching Twitter and see if we get another report on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And we will take our first pause and return with, some of the positives from that first half. Jaden McDaniels with another good game, and what we liked from that first half from Naz Reid as well. Plus, Rudy Gobert pretty impactful tonight. Not all terrible as the Wolves win 100-92. Locked On Wolves postcast rolls on. The Super Bowl is 13 days away. Super Bowl 59 to be specific. One game, two teams, endless possibilities at FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every play more exciting. There are hundreds of wagering options at FanDuel. First touchdown, anytime touchdown, predict the MVP, call the coin toss. FanDuel makes it easy to get in the action. Live betting as well. You can adjust those as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. New customers can bet $5 and potentially win $200 in bonus bets if that bet wins. Make sure you take care of that before the Super Bowl so you have the $200 to throw around on Super Bowl 59. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet $5, and if you win, score $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com, that's an official partner of Super Bowl 59. Locked On Wolves postcast. I'm Sam Ekstrom filling in for Luke Inman. He's Jack Borman at Target Center. Jack, were you the person that threw the horn from the heavens onto the court at the end of the first quarter? There was some kind of UFO that came from the skies and almost killed Rudy Gobert. I'm blaming you unless you tell me otherwise.
Yeah, I was just revolting over how blasting the air conditioning was in there. You'd have thought it was a Lynx game in the middle of July with how cold it was out there on the court floor. But no, none of us on Media Road realized it until we saw the tweets about it. But man, that was just on par for what kind of night it was down here at Target Center.
Yeah. Apropos that it'd be cold in the arena when all the shooting was ice cold. Minnesota shoots 39.5%, identical percentage to Atlanta. There were 6 total points scored in the final 5 minutes of the basketball game. And it killed me. Even Atlanta, in the final seconds of the game, they're like, yeah, we'll just play defense down 6 with like a 7-second differential between the shot and game clock. We'll just play this out. We don't need to extend or belabor this nonsense. I think that Jaden McDaniels had another acceptable game of basketball, 10 points, 8 rebounds, a couple of assists. Not particularly hot shooting, but I think we're seeing more consistency from him. Super active on the glass, which has never been his strong suit. What have you liked from Jaden of late?
Yeah, I just think the way that he's impacted the game beyond his 3-point shooting, I think has been phenomenal. He had 7 stocks a couple games ago, has continued to be super impactful on the defensive end of the floor. I thought tonight set a great tone to start this game while Randall took care of most of the work on the offensive end of the floor. Jaden had 3 tough contested defensive rebounds, a steal and a block in the first, in that first stint with the starter. So set a great tone on that end of the floor and has just continued to, to rebound the ball better and better and better with each month that's gone by. I mean, if you just go and you look at, his stats over, each month, it's been really fun to watch. And then, you look at the rebounding numbers, he's averaging almost 7 rebounds a game over his last 15 games, which is, exactly what all of us have been clamoring for a guy that's legitimately 7 feet tall. I know he's listed at 6'9", but he's taller than 6'9". He's taller than Karl Anthony Towns. I saw those two guys stand next to each other all the time in their lockers being right next to each other. But I think between that and then, just he's been playing a little bit more as a low man rim protector. So he hasn't been guarding the opposing point guard quite as much in this last, stretch of 5-6 games, which I personally really liked. I think that, Rudy Gobert certainly trusts Jaden McDaniels back there a lot. And it's also been a really nice, counter, I guess, to having the Randall and Reid front court. They really struggled to defend the rim in the earlier parts of the season. So Chris Finch made a good adjustment to start to put Jaden McDaniels out there with those two as just kind of a stopgap defensively that's super versatile, that can play at the point of attack or help protect the rim. And so he's really chosen to use him more as a rim protector. And we've seen his his defensive playmaking at the rim and rim deterrence has been really strong. So that's been great. And then I just think more confidence offensively. He's been crashing out of the corners more, crashing the offensive glass from the corners, been cutting a lot more too. And I think he had a really good chemistry with Karl Anthony Towns when Karl was here. And that was his top two-man pairing for, pretty much all last season. And Jaden really struggled when Karl got hurt because he knew how to play off of Karl really well and got a lot of easy opportunities cutting off of Karl in the post and up above the break. And so I think he's learning to do a lot of those same things off of off of Naz and off of Julius, which has been fun to see. So I think for him to add and add the rebounding and add some of the 2-point scoring has significantly raised the floor of his impact on a night-to-night basis. And then when the 3-point shot is there and it is a good matchup for him, where maybe he's being guarded by an opposing point guard or a small 2 guard, and he's got a significant size advantage, that's when we're seeing him, score 17, 20, 25 points in a game. So it's been really fun to see him kind of layer those things in this season at a much more consistent rate than what we saw in seasons prior. And I think, obviously what he did in the playoffs last year was awesome, but I think this is the most prolonged, sustained run of high level play we've seen from him thus far in his NBA career. And it's coming at a really important time as, he's being asked to do a lot more on both ends of the floor with this Wolves team still trying to, kind of figure things out.
Yeah, much needed from Jaden. Pretty good Rudy Gobert game as well. This is what he did all last year, is when the Wolves took on a smaller, overmatched opponent, Gobert feasted. And he did that tonight, 18 and 10. Cool sequence, fun sequence, maybe the most lively it got all night. Dunk, then gets in the face of Okongwu, and there's a little scuffle. Jaden plays peacemaker, no headlock involved. And then next time down, big left-handed alley-oop finish for Rudy, who was dunking all night. Also had an authoritative right-handed hammer in transition that got Ant fired up on the bench. Good Rudy game. Should have been a good Rudy game. Needed to be a good Rudy game. And I thought he delivered pretty well and was one of the few guys that seemed locked in.
Yeah, no question. And like you said, this is exactly what we saw last season from the Wolves. I mean, the Wolves against opponents under 500 last year were 25 and 6. Which was the best mark in the Western Conference. And in games decided by 3 points or less, they were 7 and 6. And you look at what they are this season, they've already played more games decided by 3 points or less. They are 8 and 6 in those games, but against teams below 500, they're 6 and 9. So they go from 25 and 6 to 6 and 9. And it's because of efforts like tonight. And there just haven't been enough guys that have brought the requisite energy and attention to detail that Rudy has. And I think, again, super good point that Rudy Gobert has been a huge floor raiser in these types of games. And Chris Finch belabored that point over and over and over again last year. And yeah, it was, in the first half, it was kind of a weird, again, it was kind of weird that the Hawks didn't start Capella. I didn't understand that necessarily because, Capella is much more of a Rudy Gobert type of player in terms of he's a rolling big, he's a rim protector, he's 7 feet, 7'1", and plays much more the same style as Gobert, whereas Onyeka Okongwu can really defend 2 through 5, 3 through 5, and is a really mobile and agile perimeter defender in addition to being a really strong interior defender as well. So he would have made more sense to guard Naz Reid, but because of the way the rotations worked out in the first half for both these teams, Okongwu was out there when Gobert was out there, and Naz Reid was out there when Capella was out there, which allowed, kind of both guys to do their work respectively in their minutes. So you saw Naz connect on 3 threes. You saw Rudy kind of get going in the pick and roll game with Mike, which was great to see. And yeah, just it was an awesome game as a whole from the Timberwolves bigs. I think, when you combine what they all did, they had 53 of the Wolves 100 points. And those three bigs, Randall, Reid, and Gobert, shot 20 of 35 from the floor. That's 57%. Everyone else tonight, 14 of 51, 27%. So the Wolves just didn't get a whole lot outside of those three guys. And something else that was somewhat significant, and I think could be something that we continue to see if Nickeil misses any time, was an important rotation note. Coming into tonight, that triumvirate had only played 3 minutes together all season long. And they played the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter together, Reid, Randall, and Gobert. And they were tremendous in those 4 minutes. They were +8. They won those minutes 12-4. Then offensive rating of 133. Again, the top offensive in the league is like 121, 122, and at a defensive rating of 50, which is pretty darn good. So those three guys were the Wolves' three best players for the majority of the night. And I liked that Finch rolled the dice and said, screw it, I'm going to go with my three guys to try to give us a spark here to start the fourth quarter. And it was an 11-0 start to the fourth quarter, which was, exactly what the team needed. And they bought themselves enough of a cushion where they were able to get out and survive this game. So I like that adjustment from Finchy. And a lot of it was just built on the back of a rock solid Gobert game. 18 points, 10 boards, 2 blocks, 7 of 9 from the floor, just a vintage, solid, exactly what you expect from Rudy Gobert in a game like this. And I think Julius Randle also deserves a lot of credit for what he did at the very start of the game, being really involved. At 7 of the Wolves' first 9 points, I believe, 3 rebounds, had a steal in there as well. And then was really important at the start of the fourth quarter as well, helping the Wolves get out to that nice start. And I thought that his physicality and aggressiveness on that end of the floor was really, really good to see. And again, I appreciate that Randall has not been overly forcing it offensively. I thought that, he took 8 3-point shots tonight. Maybe a couple more than you're normally used to seeing from Julius, but he made 3 of them and did a good job of spacing around the other 2 bigs. And, just generally was more willing to shoot those open catch and shoot threes. So I thought all 3 bigs tonight brought really good stuff to the game for the most part. And was fun to see them be able to play together and find some success.
Randall note, his first game with multiple threes since January 2nd. And after his second one, he lifted his hands to the heavens as if to say, thank you. I can now rest easy at night. I'm a 3-point shooter again. Wolves moved 4 games above 500. Here's the full list of prior attempts to do that this year. 6 times they failed. I mentioned the Miami loss, terrible at home. Got punked by the Knicks in Cat's homecoming. Then the tough game at OKC where the third quarter killed them, and then they almost came back and won. The Memphis game a couple weeks back with a jaw shot right at the end, and then Ant missing the 3 at the buzzer. Unacceptable loss to Golden State 2 Fridays ago. Curry went off late. And then the Cleveland game. Again, really good Cleveland team, tough to win. But a lot of those at home, too. And the Wolves just haven't been able to seal the deal. Maybe they break the dam here. They're 25-21. They've got, a game with the Jazz coming up after Phoenix. They have the Bulls coming up soon, the Wizards coming up soon. We'll talk more about that upcoming schedule and empty the notebook with a couple of items from tonight that I found to be absurd or interesting after the Wolves 100-92 win against the Atlanta Hawks on the Locked On Wolves postcast. Very short pause coming up. All right, welcome back. And again, check out Ben Beacon on Locked On Wolves Daily. Get that great content. Find our audio on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. He's Jack Borman joining us as he does after every single game. Before we get to the upcoming schedule, the Suns on Wednesday, the Jazz on Thursday, I mean, let's just reiterate. We kind of went through the positives in that second segment, but Chris Finch is going off right now. I mean, he went off to the reporters after the game. He said it was BS. He said it was an unacceptable second half of basketball. And you mentioned going to that unique lineup to start the fourth quarter. That tracks because the third quarter was terrible They come out with back-to-back turnovers right out of the gate, out of the locker room, and just never recovered from it and never got comfortable. 9 third-quarter turnovers. You had that stat. Missed free throws from Dillingham. Randall's turning it over. Nah had a charge at one point. Couldn't create any separation with Atlanta, who I believe ended that quarter on a 7. There was a 10-0 run at one point, I think, before the Wolves scored again. Like, what is it about this team, Jack, just big picture, that kind of plays down to competition the way it does? Because we see it too often. We saw it too often 2 years ago. And then last year, it was totally different. They were locked in night after night. We're kind of back to that 2022-23 habit that was so frustrating.
Yeah, I just think that the Timberwolves last season were probably a little over-reliant on a historically great defense. I mean, when you look at how good their defensive rating was relative to the NBA average last year and compare that to, that same number from years past, it was probably one of the 5 best NBA defenses of all time. And especially when you account for the modern era with how much more talented offense is and how much more, optimized it is mathematically. It's just so much tougher to be awesome defensively. And last year they were. And so I think that not having quite as elite of a defense and a similarly troublesome offense when they don't have it rolling, it certainly accounts for some of that discrepancy. Now, does it account for all of it? I wouldn't necessarily say so. I think an important part of it too is, like, Sam, most of these guys were on the team last year, and most of the minutes are the same rotation guys from last season. Sans, Karl Anthony Towns and Kyle Anderson. So I just think that the guys who have been here have needed to be a lot better, and that starts with Anthony Edwards. I think some of the energy that he brings into these games, and he just kind of lollygags his way through the first quarter of games and sets a really bad tone, and then tries to force it and impress himself upon the game in a way that I just don't think is conducive to successful offense. And I think we saw that tonight, especially in the third quarter. It was kind of Ant ball hogging and doing everything with the basketball, and it did not work out very well because, there were a lot of times where his teammates caught grenades and tried to do too much with it towards the end of the shot clock, and resulted in turnovers and easy buckets going the other way. I mean, tonight was a game where we thought that, or at least I thought, based on the numbers, that Atlanta would certainly lose the fast break battle, considering that their fast break points differential in the last 5 games was minus 6.4. It's 26th in the league, and they've been giving up 19 fast break points per game. But they won the fast break battle tonight, 19-6, and the Wolves themselves had been plus 4.2 in that differential, which is 7th in the NBA over the last 5 games, and had done a really good job on the fast break defensively, allowing just 11 points per game. But again, I just think that those two things kind of go hand in hand. I think when you're turning the ball over, teams are getting out the other way and able to score points in transition. You have to take the ball to the basket, and it allows the defense to get set up, and then the problems just kind of feed each other. And so I think the Wolves need to do a better job of turning their opponents over and converting those points off of turnovers at least a higher rate. Scoring more points per turnover that they force is certainly an area that they need to get better. And then in a lot of these games too, they've really struggled to rebound. And in this game, they allowed 14 offensive rebounds for 21 second chance points. And they've really struggled in that regard in some of these games recently too. So, just kind of a sloppy game. And you thought it might be a sloppy game, considering Atlanta was last in the league in turnovers in the last 5 and first in the league in steals. So you kind of figured that there might be some of that tonight. But I think you just got to force teams to play on your terms rather than always allowing other teams to kind of junk things up and make them play your way.
Yeah. Daniel in the chat, you've been heard on Mike Conley, not a Conley fan. Didn't have a good night. Didn't help the cause that the stabilizer floor general went 1 for 9. Certainly not helpful. But DiVincenzo's out. I mean, the Timberwolves acknowledged it already, I think, that Conley was struggling. They made that move, and now he's back because DiVincenzo has a great toe sprain.
He's been great since DiVincenzo went down. He's been playing his best basketball this season.
Yeah, not tonight, but previously, maybe kind of lit a fire under him. Quickly, give me 30 seconds or 60 seconds on Ricochet, number 1 pick. What'd you think of him and just his rookie campaign?
Yeah, I just think I haven't seen a number 1 pick that's got less juice than Ricochet in quite some time. I understand that he's only 19 years old, and you don't necessarily need him to do a lot offensively when you've got guys like Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic coming off the bench. He did not play tonight, but yeah, I just think that he just doesn't look very sure of himself on the offensive end of the floor. And I think the more that he's asked to do in games like this, I just think he struggles. I think he gets kind of caught in the lane and isn't super convicted with just kind of what he does on the offensive end of the floor. And I think certainly some of the tools are there on the defensive end of the floor too, just with his length and his mobility, and he's been a pretty good rebounder for the most part. But yeah, I just think that, the more he's able to kind of get into the mid-range and elevate and make some of those shots when he's inevitably going to be guarded by smaller guys like a Mike Conley or or a Nickeil or Dante, someone like that, considering how big and long and physical some of the wings that the Hawks have are, he's just going to have to develop more of that skill set. So certainly already has a 3-point shot that looks pretty fluid and pretty good, but it just kind of has to round out some of the edges and add some layers to it. And I certainly see the vision with it, and it was not a very good draft class. But yeah, he's going to need to put in some work if he wants to kind of realize what the Hawks think he can be.
Yeah, no doubt. 11, 7, and 3 for him tonight, 4 of 13 shooting. And want to give the hat tip to David Roddy. The Minnesota guy, I'm starting to feel old. Called a game at Breck when he was a freshman. And nobody knew who David Roddy was, and he was unbelievable as a freshman in high school. And he's doing it in the NBA. Good for David Roddy. He's on a roster. That's cool. Empty the notebook for me, Jack. We've got the Suns coming up on Wednesday. Feel free to give a little preview of that. Wolves beat them on the Julius Randle buzzer beater when they were here last time. And now they go down to Phoenix trying to improve on that record, get 5 games over 500. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that Jimmy Butler trade could happen at any time now. We don't know.
Suspended again today, 3rd time.
Yep.
If you're
suspended
counting.
Again. And Chicago, that game coming up too. Billy Donovan said after their game today that Zach LaVine is going to miss the next few games for personal reasons. So his time as a Bull may be over as well. That's another game that's coming up. But yeah, it's been a weird year for the Suns. They started out 8-1, then Durant gets hurt. They go 6-10. Then when Durant gets back, Booker gets hurt. So then they go 1-7, and then they get everyone healthy, and they're 8-3 now that everybody's been back and healthy. And so entering tonight, they're in the 8th spot, 23-21, right behind the Wolves. And their offense has been really efficient of late. They've been playing with a lot more pace. They've been getting up more 3-point shots, which has kind of been the formula for them. And all their guys have been shooting really well from 3, really besides Devin Booker. Looking at the rotation, and they recently added Nick Richards from the Hornets. They traded Josh Okogie and some 2nd-round picks. And so he's been starting for them at center and has been really, really solid, and has kind of, I think, lifted the floor of some of their spread pick and roll stuff that they like to do. And Nurkic has been completely out of the rotation. So he's a guy that they're probably looking to get off of, considering how bad that contract is. And I think, with the Wolves' weak spots that they can probably poke at, or fast break points, I think they've got to do a much better job running than they did tonight. The Suns are 24th in fast break points per game, and opponent fast break points per game. Their differentials -7.8 in that battle over the last 5 games, which is 2nd worst in the league. And then in terms of points off turnovers, Phoenix doesn't score very many of them. They've only scored about 11 points off turnovers per game last 5, and they've been 26th in opponent turnover percentage at about 11%, which is well below the league average there. And that's an area they haven't done well in all year. So I think if the Wolves can get out and run and convert fast break opportunities, but then also try to create as many fast break opportunities as they can, because with guys like Booker and Beal and Durant, there's certainly going to be a lot of isolation opportunities for those 3. And there's certainly times where the ball is going to get a little sticky and they're going to get in trouble and have to make some tough passes. So I think that's going to be the key for me. If you can run them off the 3-point line, force them to play inside the arc, and then cause some havoc and get out and run in the fast break, force some turnovers, then I think the Wolves could be in a good spot. But again, should be another really good opportunity for this this Wolves front court to find success, especially if, Mike struggles and Ant struggles. I mean, the two of them tonight were 7 of 29 from the floor and 2 of 16 from 3. So they're going to need to play a lot better against a Phoenix team that's got as good of a perimeter and backcourt trio as there is in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, Ant's going against his guy, Durant. He's got to show up on Wednesday, and I think he will. I think he usually does. That'll be Wednesday night late, and then Thursday night against the Jazz, back-to-back for the Wolves coming up. We'll have coverage on the Locked On Wolves postcast with Jack Borman. Luke Inman should be back for that. Really glad you joined tonight. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to those who subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota and listen on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. Wolves win 192. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hurt. We'll monitor his status with a lower left leg contusion. Thank you, Jack. Good work from Target Center. I'm Sam Ekstrom saying good night, and thank you for watching the Locked On Wolves postcast.